Welcome to Emran's podcast, episode number 37. This is your host, Suman Silwal.
Don't be afraid or ashamed of talking about stuff that is specific to women in racing.
This episode is sponsored by Pinhoti Trail Series. Visit PinhotiTrailSeries.com for latest race updates for Chiha 50K and Pinhoti 100. Early registration for Pinhoti 100 begins December 14th with a discount price of $170. I'd like to welcome Jackie Merritt to Emran's podcast. Jackie, how are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
Have you recovered from Pinhoti 100?
Yeah, I'm getting back there. I'm kind of just starting to gradually start some easy runs again this week. So yeah, things feel good.
How long does it usually take you to recover from a race like a hard race like this?
Well, the 100-miler usually takes me a little bit longer. This is only my third 100 I've run, but I've always run my hundreds at the end of any racing season I've had. So I really try not to rush the recovery coming back. I just really think that it's just good for the whole system to kind of give your body a break from the impact and anything hard aerobically for a minute, kind of better safe than sorry, risk versus benefit. That's kind of how I look at it. But I kind of took like 2 weeks and really didn't run, did some light aerobic stuff. And now, I tried, doing a couple real easy runs this week and was really happy with how I felt. So yeah, that's kind of how I like to do things. So I probably won't start training for another couple weeks either, like doing any hard workouts or anything.
So you said the end of the season. When does your season starts and ends?
It kind of depends on the year, really. As you know, there's ultras all year round at this point in our sport. So it's very tempting to kind of race all year round and kind of hard to pick when, your seasons and when you want to race and build up and when you kind of take an off season. For me this year in particular, I took a very light spring. Like I really didn't race much at all. All this spring I raced like 150K and that was like the end of April because I was finishing my PhD dissertation. So I figured I really don't need the stress of racing. So I kind of, just did some other life stuff there. So that's kind of how this year worked out for me. And then I kind of geared up late spring and the summer and kind of been racing since then.
So you moved from northeast to southeast. You know that our season just started, so it's a little different for us.
Yeah, it's finally cooling down. It was really nice running this morning when it was, like 40 degrees. I love that weather. So
you live in Atlanta area. We're in south here. We get a 1 day of snow, and after that, it's all winter is like this. So
yeah, it's quite nice.
What is the next big race are you training for?
My next big race is the Georgia Death Race, and that is on April 1st. Yeah, that's up in North Georgia here. So I'll definitely, everything I do from now until then, I'll be kind of gearing up towards that. I have a couple of races I'm picking up in the meantime, like I'm doing the Mountain Mist the end of January, and then I'm also doing the Mount Mitchell Challenge in February, I think it is. So
talking about running, can you share your running journey with us? How did you start running? And now you run 100 miles. And how did you really go into ultra running?
People ask me all the time if I ran cross country, and I didn't run ever until like later in college. I grew up with a basketball background, so my family was very athletics oriented, but I was not running unless I was, there was a ball involved. And I actually really didn't like running because it was kind of like our punishment for, missing foul shots and whatnot. But like I wasn't bad at it. I was pretty like scrappy and whatnot in basketball and that sport. And so then in college at James Madison, I joined triathlon club and I kind of started doing, the triathlon thing. And I was really the best at the running division of that sport. And then where I grew up in Maryland is kind of I grew up right near the starting line of the JFK 50 mile, which happened to be this past weekend. Actually, but I grew up right near the starting line for that, and it was like this big local event. So I'd always heard about people running this 50-mile race, and I, had been out and kind of seen these people, and I kind of thought they were a little crazy. But yeah, as I started running with Triathlon Club, I actually started training with a friend back home, and he did the JFK, and he kind of like, hearing him talk about the race, I don't know, it kind of got me planted a seed in my mind to sign up for it. So JFK was my first ultra, which was that 50 miler. And then I didn't really start taking off with running ultras right after that. But in the years that followed, I kind of got more and more into trail running, and then trail running community kind of leads to ultra running. And I just really like the long distance out all the day, aspect of the whole ultra scene. So I guess that's how I got into it.
So do you only do ultra races, or do you also do trail races only, or do you also run road marathons or anything like that?
I do a fair amount of road racing, kind of depending on the season. Since I moved to Atlanta this summer, I've actually done quite a bit of at least my training on the road, just because it's not very feasible for me to get out to the trails most days of the week with work and whatnot, which is something that I do miss when I was living in Delaware. So but I mean, you can get quite fast training on the road around here, and there are certainly some fast people, and I have some fast new friends that I've made out here. So I do a lot of my training now on the road. I occasionally will run like a road race, like a road marathon. I did run a road half marathon like a few weeks ago, actually like 2 weeks before Pinhoti, which I thought was like a really good kind of tune up the leg speed before the 100 type of race. I dabble in road racing.
Definitely, I do that too. I'm always between road and trail, so any given day you will see me running races between those places.
Yeah, it's definitely like a different type of challenge, like just being out there, hammering it on the road. Like your pace is so much more objective and than it would be on, like the trail. It's a little bit less dictated by the terrain than the trail run would be.
Definitely. So you went from being non-runner to runner, and eventually became you're now an ultra marathoner. What was your struggle during those times, going from being non-runner to what you are now?
Well, I guess I think when I kind of reflect back on the whole evolution of running for me, I think the biggest struggle was probably finding the balance between rest and between recovery and workouts. It's just like very easy once you start racing that you kind of want to, like I said before, kind of, there's always races full year round. So it's kind of easy to just jump from this race to this race to this race and just kind of like run yourself into the ground and never really give yourself adequate time to recover. And you can do it for a little while, but it will catch up with you. And so I kind of learned that a little bit the hard way, but I kind of caught on to it, backed off a little bit. This was about, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. And then, just even within a training bout, kind of knowing, the difference between like, okay, you're training for an ultra marathon, you're always really going to be running on tired legs for the most part, with your high mileage weeks, but kind of knowing the difference between, this is normal fatigued versus I need to take a recovery day, a light cross day, a yoga day, whatever, and really kind of like learning what that feels like. I think that was probably the biggest struggle because it's hard. Like you can't really write that in a book. You can't read that from a blog. Like that's something that you kind of have to feel and know yourself to really get it.
Definitely, I really truly agree with you because I'm like that. I'm jumping from the race to race, and then my tired legs are sometimes screaming for rest. Let's switch the topic a little bit. Let's talk about your experience Pinhoti 100. Can you tell us how was your experience? How did you run through the Pinhoti? How did you like the course? Give us a rundown your experience of Pinhoti 100.
Yeah, sure. Pinhoti was my kind of focus race for the fall. And so I really kind of went into Pinhoti like I've run 200s before Pinhoti, but I never really felt like I really quite ran the distance at like the best that I could on that day. Something like would always like came up in those two races, one thing or another. And so anyways, I was very determined to run a smart race, but at the same time run my best at Pinhoti and give it just a really solid effort. And I was pretty confident with my training. So that's kind of what I went into it. How I went into it. Yeah, I mean, I think it was it was a well executed race overall. I kind of, hung back a little bit in the beginning, hiked the short, steep hills early, even when, you don't really want to, because your fitness is good, you're tapered, you're ready to run, but, really kind of just holding back a little bit, at the beginning. And then, yeah, I mean, I think that it went, it went pretty well.
I remember you coming through the Ball Rock aid station, and you were still looked really fresh, and some of the people made a comment about, hey, look at her, she's looking still fresh. What was your experience coming up to the Ball Rock?
Yeah, Ball Rock was actually very exciting because I got to the summit well before I thought I was going to, because if you look on the elevation profile, it looks pretty long and steep, at least from the elevation profile, but it really did not feel like that when I was climbing. I actually ran a good bit of the climb, so I was pretty excited that I was already at the top. And so, yeah, I was feeling really good at Bald Rock. It was starting to heat up a little bit, which was, nothing crazy, but it was certainly uncharacteristic for that time of year. And so, yeah, I really felt good until mile 75. I picked up my pacer. My brother-in-law was pacing me. He's not even really a runner, but I somehow convinced him to run 20 miles through the woods with me in the middle of the night. And he picked me up at 65. And then going up the pinnacle climb, now that was probably the hardest. Well, that was definitely the hardest climb of the day. It felt a lot harder than it looked on the at least on the profile, maybe because it's quite steep, and it seemed to go on forever, and my stomach wasn't feeling great when I got to the top of there. And Trader Joe's ginger chews have saved my life more than once in ultras, so I sucked down a few of those, and then I was feeling a lot better after that. And at mile 85, when you come out to that Jeep road, and then it's almost entirely Jeep road until the finish, with one small single section, I was about 15 minutes behind course record pace, which I knew I had been really close to all day. So I was just really driven to try to make up that time and run as hard as I could in those last 15 miles. So yeah, so that's kind of how my race unfolded, and then that's essentially what I did for the last 15 miles.
That sounds like a great execution for your race execution, and fun race for you. Was there any difficult point? You mentioned that climbing the pinnacle, and before a lot of people had heat problems, and some of the people are talking about maybe the smoke, some part of the Pinhoti may have affected their performance. Did you have any experience like that?
I didn't. I was actually kind of nervous about the smoke part. I can tell you I didn't really notice the smoke. The only part that I can think of about the air quality was when it was quite dry. And when we were running on some of the gravel roads, I think specifically the one after mile 55, I think Adams Gap or something, there would be cars, an occasional car that would drive by on the gravel road, and it would just fume up all this dust, and it was impossible to breathe, and you'd breathe in and you would just get dirt in your mouth, so much just sand and grit that I could grind my teeth and feel that, and it was just oh my gosh. So I just started holding my breath when cars would drive by. So that was the only thing about the air. The air that I noticed is just it was super dry. I'm sure my allergies were probably flaring up a little bit, but not I was so focused I might not have really noticed. It might not have been as bad enough for me to notice it.
Yeah, this year been dry. It hasn't rained in a while now, and last year it was complete rain from the start to finish.
Yeah, I know. My husband actually ran Pinhoti last year, and I was out pacing him, and it was pouring rain for so long. I remember that.
Definitely. How was your training for Pinhoti. Did you do any special training, or since it was your focus race? So I just want to know, how was your training?
Yeah, my training, it was actually pretty different than I did some pretty different stuff than I had normally been doing. I actually started working with a coach, AJW, for the first time that I'd ever worked with a coach. I was always kind of like self-coached, which I think turned out to be really good for me, because there's all when you're doing your own training plans, there's always like those days when you're like, you question your recovery days or your cross days, like maybe I should be out there running, like that type of thing. So I think that really helped me stick with the plan. I had a plan, I stuck with it, and kind of had like a correspondence with someone really on a daily basis. I would talk to him, but he had me doing stuff that I was not doing during my own training. Like, for example, I think the first week when I started training with him, he was like, okay, Thursday, 90-minute tempo on hills. And I'm just like, what? 90-minute tempo? That's insane. That's like a half marathon, like, my tempos are hard, but they're 40 minutes, but, and they're really hard. So, there's just like stuff like that, I probably would not have been doing, on my own, just so it was kind of like, he's like, gearing up for the 100-miler, you have to make your tempos longer. So that was like one of the things that I did. The other really critical thing that I did was a little more specific to Pinhoti itself, was I would do, standard long trail run, maybe like Saturday on the weekend, maybe like 25, 30 miles. And then the next day I would do a hard road tempo run. And that run really sucked every single time. But like every single road tempo following a long, 30-mile trail run, I would be thinking about those last 15 miles of Pinhoti and just being like, this is how that's going to feel. And it did. It felt remarkably similar when I got to mile 85. And I was like, all right, well, here's my road tempo right now. This is what I've been training for. So I really think that helped me in the last 15 miles of that race, because it was, so runnable in the last 15. So I think that doing that really helped simulate Pinhoti specifically. So those are a couple of things I did training.
It sounds like you had a great training and, of course, a great race. Before we move to the next section, I would like you to talk to us about this Milestone pod that you are sponsored by. Can you describe what it is? I briefly read the description of it.
So, yeah, Milestone pod is a small, lightweight sensor that you can attach to your shoe, and it gives you feedback on things like your mileage, your pace, just like a GPS watch, but it also gives you feedback on your biomechanical running data. And so you basically go out for a run with the sensor attached to your shoe, you come back from the run, you sync the pod with an app on your phone, and then you'll be able to see graphical displays of, all of your running mechanical data and also, mileage, your pace, that type of thing. So you can retroactively look at all of that data. And the gait mechanical data that it gives you is our gait metrics that we know are associated with running-related injuries, and also metrics that are related to running economy, so how efficient you are in your running form. So so it's very cool insights into how you're running. So that I definitely used that the pod in my training leading up to Pinhoti, especially the rate of impact metric that it gives, because we do know that rate of impact is related to things like shin splints, which I've kind of struggled with in the past. And so getting that feedback, out in, training on the trails, training on the roads, and really helped me reduce my rate of impact and help me stay healthy in training, especially when I increase my mileage a lot during the weeks. weeks leading up to the race. So
where can we get the pod from?
Well, you can get it. I think actually, I'm pretty sure Big Peach is selling it now. That's relatively new. Fleet Feet Sports is also selling it in Atlanta. But you can also order it from milestonepod.com. You can get it on Amazon. Just look up Milestone Pod. It's actually really cool because it is a really affordable device. It's $25, and for all the data that you get, it gives you almost as much data as your GPS watch, and then, data about your running form. So yeah, I'm also a physical therapist, and I think that this is really awesome that we're able to get some of this running mechanical data with, outside of a biomechanics laboratory. I think that's just like a really cool thing that people can definitely start taking advantage of with this wearable technology that's coming out now.
Definitely. I will link it from this podcast show notes, so people can get it from probably Amazon.com or something. So we'll do that. Yeah. Jackie, are you ready for M-Run Sprint Round?
Yeah, sure.
What type of shoes do you wear?
For trail running, I've been wearing the Saucony Peregrine 6.
And for the road?
Oh, for the road, if I'm doing like a base road mileage, I've been wearing the Saucony Ride 9s, which I really like. And then I also really like Saucony Kinevara for more up-tempo track workouts and stuff.
Beyond Milestone Pod, do you use any GPS device for track your run?
I don't use GPS too much. Sometimes I'll use my Fitbit Surge that has a GPS in it. So I'll occasionally use that, but for the most part, I don't use GPS when I run.
So most part, you use the Milestone Pod, correct?
Yeah, I use Milestone Pod, and then for workouts, I just use a simple wristwatch and just do workouts by time.
Are you a mostly trail runner, road runner, or both? I think you mentioned you're both.
Yeah, I have to call myself both. Most of my races are trail. A lot of my running is on the road.
Yeah, I'm running and racing in both places. So, are you a downhiller or uphill climber?
Definitely a downhill runner.
Yeah. So, what kind of technique do you use to go fast and downhill? Is there anything specific you do, or?
Just nothing. I just think about kind of like, controlled falling. I think some of the most common mistakes I see people do on downhill is they shorten their step length suddenly, or they're like dramatically increase their step length. And really, you don't really have to change your cadence that much. And then the other common thing that also is good for injury prevention is really, using your core on the downhill and trying not to like arch your backwards and tilt your pelvis forward. I think that mechanically that's a good thing. And then also just try not to keep your feet on the ground very long. You're kind of like, it's almost like running on hot coals. Like that's the technique I tell people to use. Like you don't want your foot on the ground for long at all. Yeah, those would be like the tips I would give.
Yeah, I'm not a good downhiller, so. What type of hydration plan do you use, including hydration pack, bottles, any special drink you use for your hydration?
As far as like how I carry my hydration, I have always been like a handheld person. Like when I can, I really enjoy running with handheld, but I only like carrying one handheld. I don't like carrying two. So of course that, limits the amount of hydration you can carry. But I guess also in the summer in Atlanta, that was also convenient. Or I was preferable rather over the hydration pack, because the hydration pack can add, I feel like can add like a considerable amount of heat to like have something like just on your back like that. But there's new research that's come out about like running economy and compares, carrying weight at your the end of your upper extremity versus carrying it at your core, and it is overwhelmingly more efficient to carry the weight at your core than it is to carry it at your just carry it in your hand. So I've been trying to, especially in the cooler weather, take advantage of that and use more of a hydration pack type of strategy. So that's probably more detailed than you wanted to know on that, but that I've been trying to go more hydration pack on some of these races and stuff.
I was going to ask you if you use water versus all the other stuff. So.
Oh yeah, I do. I do use Tailwind. I really like Tailwind. I kind of I absolutely hate taking gels. Like I haven't taken a gel in 2 years because my stomach just revolts. So I like doing like that slow caloric drip strategy where you're just kind of like sipping slowly, but like sipping frequently. And I think that kind of delivering the calories in kind of that slow release manner just really works well for me. And so taking my calories in via fluids has been working well.
What type of nutrition plan do you follow, or if you follow any?
Well, it depends on the distance of the race and how long I'm going to be out there probably, and then how hot it is. So multifactorial. But for Pinhoti, I did a lot of Tailwind. I try, for 100-milers, especially, I eat solid food during that. And so, for Pinhoti, I was just trying to eat early and often. So in the first 10 minutes of the race, I was like, I could probably eat. And so I just started eating Larabars. So just if I feel like I can eat, I eat, especially in a 100-miler. If you feel like you can eat, it's probably a good sign. So, just do it. So I was eating Larabars in the first part of Pinhoti, and then I was eating avocado tacos, which is just avocado, salt, lime juice in corn tortilla. So I was eating those, which actually worked really well because they're not I'm really sensitive to a lot of sweet stuff, which is why I think gels don't really sit well with me. And so I think the avocado and just kind of the bland flour corn tortilla, it just worked well because it wasn't sweet, but it was still calories. I do like Coca-Cola. So I'll usually try to drink a few sips at, aid stations there. I like ginger chews. I don't really have a methodical nutrition strategy. Some people are I'm going to do this every 20 minutes. I'm going to do this every 30 minutes. I really don't do that. Like I said, I kind of just slowly and frequently, just giving myself calories. I find that when I've tried to do that, it just feels I'm giving myself gut bombs every 20 minutes, and that strategy just doesn't work well for me. So, that's kind of that's what I was doing for Pinhoti.
Great. That sounds like a great nutrition plan. I need to listen to you more often.
Yeah.
Is there a race that you haven't run that you like to run anytime soon?
Well, I mean, it sounds a little cliche, but I mean, Western States, I would really love to get to Western States. I would love to run it. Like we were talking about before with the downhill aspect, Western States has a lot of it, and being a point to point, you don't have to necessarily climb back up some of those hills you run down. So that's kind of an enticing aspect of that race for me. So I guess I would say that one.
Definitely. A lot of people have applied Western States after Pinhoti, so that was the last race, one of the last races.
Yeah.
Before we conclude this interview, I would like you to give a word of advice to women in ultra runnings. They like to run ultras and go distance like you have done, or you're doing right now. Can you give us a word of advice?
Advice to women and specific? Yeah, I mean, I would say don't limit yourself, and don't think that, because of your physiology and anatomy that you're less capable than somebody else at doing the same thing. And then at the same time, don't be afraid or ashamed of talking about stuff that is specific to women in racing. I mean, I've had to talk to my crew and my pacers about stuff when you're out there that, has traditionally been uncomfortable, or maybe is something where, thought maybe we shouldn't be talking about this, but I think it's really important that they should be able to talk about whatever's important in running and racing, and communicate that with the people who need to hear it. So that's the advice I would give to them.
Definitely. You've been such a great trail runner, and I'm looking forward to hearing more of your running journey and as you go forward. And since you moved in Southeast, I'm going to see you more. So thanks for thanks for talking to us here at the M-Runs podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to another episode of M-Runs podcast. If you're an iTunes user, please rate, review, and subscribe to our channel.